My name is Landon Simpson, and welcome to Inside the Silver Screen, an insight into all things cinema. On this week's episode, we'll look at the close relationship between Jordan Peele's work in comedy and his work in horror. Then, KBVR-TV's Kevin Foster will dive deep into the Brazilian film City of God. After that, we'll have a review of the new HBO Max crime thriller The Little Things, starring Denzel Washington, Jared Leto, and Rami Malek. Lastly, we'll be recommending 5 movies per major streaming service that are available to watch right now. Let's get into it. We'll start this segment by looking at 2 clips.
All right, listen up. Sheriff's Department's close by. We'll be safe there. Okay. Stay close. I'll get you out of here. Oh my God! They got Brad! They got Brad! They got Brad! They didn't get us! They didn't get us! Okay? We're still alive. All right, keep it together. Yeah, okay. We gotta make it to that sheriff's station. Oh my God.
Without prior knowledge, these 2 scenes probably look and feel rather similar. The horror aspects of the scenes are mixed right in with touches of humor. Both are the work of 41-year-old comedian-turned-director Jordan Peele, and both build the audience's anticipation. However, the first clip comes from a sketch show with comedy partner Keegan-Michael Key called Key and Peele. Their show is known for such skits as East-West Bowl and Substitute Teacher. The second clip is from 2017's Get Out, Peele's first effort in writing and directing, which earned him an Oscar win for Best Original Screenplay, as well as nominations in Best Director and Best Picture. Despite the fact that the first clip comes from a 2.5-minute comedy sketch and the second comes from an Oscar-winning horror thriller, you might not notice a big difference. This is due to the way that Peele uses his well-tuned sense of timing in order to keep the audience at the edge of their seat. In this segment, we'll look at how Jordan Peele expertly builds audience anticipation in both his comedy sketches and his horror films. Anticipation is built when both the audience and the protagonist are looking for answers. This is accomplished by putting the protagonist in a situation where the outcome or reason for the situation is unclear and unknown. There will always be audience anticipation when the audience cannot answer the question, what is going to happen next? Our brains naturally seek an answer to this question. When we cannot find one, we become uneasy, thus building anticipation. For an example, let's return to the zombie sketch from Key and Peele to show how Peele continuously builds anticipation while mixing horror and comedy elements.
Oh my God.
At this point in the clip, the protagonists don't know how they are going to make it out of the situation alive, and by extension, neither does the audience.
Are you getting this? Yeah, what is up?
Now we know the zombies aren't going to attack them. But what's the reason for this? Again, the brain naturally seeks an answer.
Come on! What is that? They seriously wouldn't let her eat us.
Hey, guys. Isn't this great? These racist zombies are leaving us alone. Come on, we having a party.
And now we have the answer, and the timing of the reveal relieves the anticipation. Peele uses perfect comedic timing to give us the answer that our brains have been seeking and draws laughs from the audience. To see how he accomplishes a similar thing in a feature film, let's look at the Get Out clip. At this point in the movie, the audience has already been kept almost completely in the dark surrounding the situations with Rose's peculiar family. So as soon as Chris looks into the distance, the audience naturally begins to raise questions. Peele tosses in bits of comedy here with the way that the guy is running and how random this event is, but that isn't the main purpose of this scene. The purpose is to bring the audience to the edge of their seat and raise the tension. At this point, the tension has been rising and now the audience anticipates the payoff. They want the answer to the question, what happens next? They want the reasoning behind the event. But there's no real answer to that question. This scene builds anticipation in the moment but never relieves that anticipation. Rather, it adds to the overall levels of tension and suspense for the entirety of the movie. We have seen two examples of how Peele uses tension-building techniques when combining his two primary genres. Now, let's look at how he separates them and masters them each individually.
Drew, come forward.
First, notice how the sketch naturally uses and parodies the anticipation of a real cooking show. Since the audience is already familiar with what the sketch is parodying, the music and setting puts them right into the state of anticipating the judge's reaction.
Unbelievable. Well, Drew, I have a huge problem with this dish. It's that you haven't made it for me sooner.
Thank you, Chef.
Because if you had, Drew, then I would know how good you are at cooking food that's bad.
Now the viewer gets the joke. He flip-flops, and the anticipation is completely diverted to the punchline.
In conclusion,
the punchline is delivered, and the timing likely drew a laugh from viewers. But because Peele is such a master of keeping the audience guessing, he can also draw other reactions from the viewers. Reactions like fright. To see how he can also instill fear in an audience, let's look at his 2019 feature film, Us. Right off the bat, the boy saying,
"There's a family in our driveway,"
launches the tension levels of the scene.
Huh. Who is that?
What?
Zora, give me your phone.
I'm not on
Zora!
Now the cops are already on their way. If I were you...
Steadily, over the 8-minute course of this scene, the doppelganger family tries to break into the house, and when they finally do, they simply set the Wilson family down on the couch, and the mother's doppelganger speaks.
Once upon a time, there was a girl.
She goes on to explain a story of a girl's shadow. It essentially sets up the conflict and backstory of the movie. However, you might have noticed that one thing in this scene is similar to the Get Out scene. There is no major relief of anticipation. In fact, there isn't any relief of anticipation until the closing moments of this movie. This is why the horror throughout the movie works so well. Through his time as a comedian, Peele has learned how to create and foster the feeling of anticipation in an audience. He uses this to his advantage when translating his skills to horror. He understands that to draw reactions from viewers, he needs to keep them guessing. That's why we laugh when we realize that the zombies are racist. It's why we breathe a sigh of relief when the running man turns away from Chris and Get Out. It's why we are waiting at the edge of our seats to see if the judge will like the chef's dish. And it's why the driveway scene from Us is one of the most disturbing and unsettling scenes in recent memory.
The American crime drama has become a classic staple for excellence. Coppola set the stage with the Godfather films, Scorsese followed with Goodfellas, The Departed, and Taxi Driver. Tarantino threw his hand in with Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. Even the Coen brothers weigh in with Fargo and No Country for Old Men. But I want you to consider something. What if we took the characters and changed them all to children? Sure, it sounds unrealistic, maybe a bit depressing, certainly disturbing, like some kind of Boss Baby meets Kill Bill. But there is an element to all of these crime movies that is meant to depict the darkness of the world of crime. People can certainly become involved in crime from a young age, but we don't commonly see depictions of this in American cinema, at least not beyond the intros of movies like Goodfellas. One movie that dives full force into the dark reality of crime is the 2002 Brazilian film City of God. Directed by Fernando Meirelles and Katia Lund, the story follows the escalation of a drug war in the City of God, a slum in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The heads of the drug war, however, are quite young, but also ruthless. City of God contains a few major characters. Lil Zay, originally Lil Dice, is our drug kingpin who effectively runs the drug scene in the City of God. He moves with purpose and confidence and doesn't take disrespect, but his ego often comes back to bite him. Rocket, on the other hand, is our protagonist and narrator. The City of God takes a lot from him, but he doesn't shy away from the potential that he sees there. Along with others, Rocket doesn't wish to be corrupted by the City of God, but he will have to fight against the natural order of things in order to remain safe within the slums. Then we have Benny, a fun and light-hearted character to take some tension out of the film, but he begs the question, can anyone survive the city with that kind of personality? Knockout Ned is certainly proof that good has a lot of trouble staying good within the city. Each character plays a role in this crime epic, which provides some serious competition for the American dramas with an even darker twist that shines a light on the troubles of impoverished communities. City of God is loosely based on true events depicted in a book of the same name. The City of God, or Cidade de Deus, is the real name of a suburb in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. City of God may be dark, even tough to watch at times, but it is an honest and brutal telling of a great crime story that warrants a watch. It is a story of corruption, innocence, evil, and karma. There's irony in the title. While our characters are in the City of God, the slum is largely lawless and uncontained. It seems near impossible that any god could preside over such a violent scene, yet no decision that a character makes comes without consequences, good or bad. Consequences are generally a sign of good writing, and City of God is certainly well written. Not to mention, it was also nominated for 4 Oscars, one of which was Best Editing, which you will notice right from the beginning, where there is an incredibly intense scene of characters chasing after a chicken of all things. While City of God may not have as much critical recognition as something like Goodfellas, it tells just as complete of a story that will keep anyone entertained for the full 2 hours. City of God has everything: complex character relationships, interlocking story details, beautiful cinematography, meticulous and exciting edits, crucial thematic meaning, and above all, a somewhat scary yet important realism that is both haunting and exhilarating to watch. If you're looking to expand your horizons into global cinema, City of God is streaming on HBO Max, and it is a great place to start.
The Little Things is a crime thriller starring Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto, released in theaters and HBO Max last Friday. Writer and director John Lee Hancock finally succeeded in bringing it to the screen this year after being in various stages of development for 30 years. While the movie aims high with a star-studded cast, it ultimately falls victim to the little things like poor editing and pacing. The story is one very familiar in the genre. Joe Deacon, played by Denzel Washington, is an old, tortured California sheriff who returns to LA where he is haunted by his experiences as a detective 5 years earlier. After stumbling onto a series of serial killings similar to unsolved cases during his time, he teams up with a young and hopeful family man detective, Jim Baxter, played by Rami Malek. Together they track down leads and end up with Albert Sparma, played by Jared Leto, as the main suspect. If it sounds familiar, that's because it very much is. The script contains heavy draws from David Fincher's 1995 film Seven, but without the tight storytelling and dark tone. At times, the script wanders and leaves the audience in confusion of how the detectives landed at a certain spot. However, the 2 best parts of this film are the performances by Denzel Washington and Jared Leto. Washington plays the haggard detective to a T. Even him simply sitting in a hotel room looking at a wall of victims can seem like one of the best moments of this movie due to his expressions. Above all, the character that will leave the audience wanting more is Leto's gaunt and unkempt Albert Sparma. His sunken eyes do a lot of the groundwork for portraying him as the possible killer. The best moment in the movie comes when Denzel and Leto are going toe-to-toe with each other in the interrogation room. Unfortunately, Rami Malek is in that scene as well. Malek's performance is very forgettable and at times just plain terrible. He spends the majority of his screen time either underacting or overacting. He definitely had a hard time finding a thread in this role, which is rare for the Oscar-winning actor. But above all else, the biggest problem with this film is the poor editing and pacing throughout. For the first 30 minutes especially, the editing seemed to have too many jump cuts that seemed to only serve to hide continuity errors. It makes the pacing of the film feel very frenetic, although there is no real reason for it to feel that way. On top of that, there are a variety of different shot setups and angles throughout each and every scene, which only serves to disorient the viewer. For an example, take a look at this scene where Deacon and Baxter talk about the case in a bar. Notice that the camera is facing them, and now the camera moves to behind them and switches the orientation of the viewer. This type of angle switch can work at times, but the quick editing paired with the switches just made the scene distracting. In regards to pacing, the film really drags all the way through and never has that one exciting scene that movies like this need to have to be successful. In the end, The Little Things serves as a good popcorn movie that is worth a watch if you're at home with nothing else to put on. Washington and Leto give good performances, but the script and editing only bring them down. The Little Things fails to come out of the shadow of the movies that it is so clearly influenced by, and just becomes another mediocre psychological thriller. Flipping through streaming services trying to find something good to watch has been a very time-consuming activity since the pandemic started, so us here at Inside the Silver Screen decided to make a cheat sheet. We picked the best movies on each of the major streaming services to recommend to our viewers. We will be very briefly talking about 4 American films and 1 foreign film from Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, and Canopy. Canopy is a smaller streaming service that is accessible for free to all Oregon State students. Simply type in Canopy Oregon State into Google and follow the instructions. We start with Netflix and a movie called Good Time. Directed by the Safdie brothers and starring Robert Pattinson, Good Time is the story of a man trying to get his brother out of jail after a botched robbery. Goodfellas is directed by Martin Scorsese and it stars Ray Liotta and Robert De Niro. It tells the story of one mobster's experience through the years. The Social Network is directed by David Fincher and tells the story of the creation of Facebook and its founders' legal issues. There Will Be Blood is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, where Daniel Day-Lewis plays an oil man consumed by greed. The Untouchables is a foreign film directed by Olivier Nakache and Eric Toledano. It's a French film about a recently handicapped millionaire and his caregiver. Turning to Hulu, we start with Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher. Ben Affleck plays a husband at the center of a media circus after his wife disappears. One of my favorite movies, Prisoners, is directed by Denis Villeneuve. Hugh Jackman plays a father that will stop at nothing to find his missing daughter, while Jake Gyllenhaal plays the detective trying to find her. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is directed by Ben Stiller and also stars Ben Stiller. It is about a daydreamer who's pushed out of his comfort zone when he needs to travel across the world to find a photo for the cover of Life magazine. The Truman Show, released in 1998 and directed by Peter Weir, stars Jim Carrey as a man who discovers his entire life is just a TV show. Our foreign film on Hulu is Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho, who you might recognize from our last episode of Inside the Silver Screen. It is about 2 South Korean families from opposite ends of the socioeconomic spectrum that collide when one family infiltrates the other. It won Best Picture last year. On Amazon Prime, we start with Almost Famous, directed by Cameron Crowe. A young journalist finds himself in the middle of a rock and roll tour with a band called Stillwater. Lost in Translation is directed by Sofia Coppola. 2 lost souls played by Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson cross paths in Tokyo. Mid-90s is Jonah Hill's directorial debut, and it's about a young boy who finds comfort in a group of friends that love to skate. Sound of Metal is my pick for Best Picture this year. It's directed by Darius Martyr, and Riz Ahmed plays a drummer whose life has changed when he loses his hearing. Foreign film The Second Mother is a Brazilian film about a live-in housekeeper's experience with her employers when her estranged daughter comes to live with them. Directed by Anna Muellart. Now we turn to HBO Max, my personal favorite streaming service for movies. Before Sunrise and Before Sunset are directed by Richard Linklater. They are 2 films out of a 3-film trilogy about 2 people's relationship over time. Sunrise is set in Vienna, while Sunset takes place in Paris. Point Break is directed by Catherine Bigelow. Keanu Reeves plays an FBI agent that tries to take down a group of surfers that rob banks in order to fund their travels. Pulp Fiction, directed by Quentin Tarantino, portrays the lives of 2 hitmen, a boxer, a gangster, and his wife, that all intersect over the course of 3 days. Previously mentioned in our The Little Things review, Seven is directed by David Fincher. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman hunt down a serial killer who bases his murders off of the 7 deadly sins. And then we have City of God. Mentioned earlier in the show, City of God is a Brazilian film about young kids growing up in the slums of Rio de Janeiro. We end with the streaming service Canopy. 8th Grade is directed by Bo Burnham, and it tells the story of a young girl navigating her way through middle school. Enemy, directed by Denis Villeneuve, is a deeply abstract film about a teacher played by Jake Gyllenhaal who tracks down someone he thinks is his identical clone. Memento is directed by Christopher Nolan. It stars Guy Pearce as a man consumed with finding his wife's killer. Moonlight, directed by Barry Jenkins, is a coming-of-age film about a young African-American man finding his place in the world. And our foreign film on Canopy is La Haine, directed by Matthew Kassovitz. It's a tale of 3 young Frenchmen over the course of a day as they deal with the aftermath of a violent riot. Watch this if you are a fan of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. With those recommendations, that's a wrap for this episode of Inside the Silver Screen. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Our next episode will be available Thursday, February 18th, but until then, be sure to subscribe to the KBVR-TV channel and check out the other shows like Geeking Out About It, Locals Live, and a variety of other content. On top of that, keep watching more movies.